Hi, good evening. I'd like to call to order the work session of the Methacton Board of School Directors on March 21st, 2023. Please rise for the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. By way of attendance, all school directors are in attendance. Now it's time for recognition of guests and scheduled speakers. Dr. Zerbe.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, we have three presentations. So we have Jack Ayers from Fidavia to present an update on the Arrowhead construction project. Jack, members of the board, you have a copy of that presentation at your table, and we're going to present it on the screen behind you.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jack Ayers, and I represent Fidavia Construction Management and the Methacton School District. On Arrowhead, brief update. Site and building exterior, we completed all the split rail fencing installations throughout the site, completed 98% of the seeding and mulching. It's just about there. Completed topsoiling at phase 4 areas, completed the AstroTurf at the outdoor learning space, completed the remaining ornamental fencing at the outdoor learning space as well. Building interior, it's just continuing punch list activities throughout the building. And under mechanical, electrical, plumbing, we're continuing the MEP punch list items throughout the building. We performed the balancing, commissioning throughout the building and provided a punch list of items to be adjusted and corrected. And we completed all the faucet repairs throughout the building. Upcoming, we're going to complete all final commissioning of building HVAC and water systems. We're going to continue the remaining site work at phase 4 areas. That should basically say complete because the job will be over by April 15th. Apply the final fertilizer installments throughout the project site. Complete the fabric canopy at the outdoor learning space. Complete the bituminous wearing paving course at the fire lane. And continue the project closeout procedures, which we're on top of right now. That's basically it.
Are there any questions from members of the board to my left? Ms. Reese?
I have two questions, and one may not be for you. Somebody asked me this, and I literally just drove by Arrowhead yesterday. So I see the fence outside the outdoor learning area. And I see the split rail fence, not in the presentation, but when you drive by. And then the playground. And there is not going to be any fence around the playground, correct? Because there is already the split rail at the road. Someone just asked me this, and I don't remember the answer.
No, we are in the process of having a fence put in. I believe 3 foot height, or was it 3.5?
4.
4?
Yeah.
Okay. So it'll be the same color as the larger fence, the black rail, but it'll be to provide an enclosure of sorts for students as they're playing.
Okay, and I wasn't positive. And then when I saw the split rail, because I don't think I had seen it, or if I did, I didn't remember. And my other question, and this might be for Dr. Zerbe, is we still don't have an official ribbon cutting date, correct?
We do.
Okay.
I was trying to remember as he's presenting because I figured that would be a question.
Okay.
And I'm not prepared to give you that date.
April sometime, right? Or did I make that up?
I'm not going to comment on the date.
Understood. Thank you.
But we do have a date. I know it's been set. We're likely to be announcing that in about a week or two. Any other questions from members to my left? Seeing no to the left, to my right. Any comments, questions? Seeing none. Jack, thank you so much for your commitment to this project. We really appreciate it. Next on the agenda, we have full day kindergarten update. We have Dr. Roth and Ms. Strauss. Dr. Walsh, as you know, is our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and Ms. Strauss is our Supervisor of Elementary Education. Dr. Walsh.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight with Mrs. Tara Strauss, our Supervisor of Elementary Education, and it's our pleasure to share with you an update on our full-day kindergarten journey. Next slide. So building the foundation, it's been more than a year of planning, but once the Board of School Directors officially approved full-day kindergarten in 2021, we immediately assembled a committee led by Dr. Euchre to look at what full-day kindergarten would look like for our students here in Methacton. We ordered a myriad of supplies such as the kitchens, big books, manipulatives, and other resources to support early learning and early teaching here in our school district. We also did a community outreach last spring. We helped spread the word by visiting our community libraries. We also used our social media as well as Mrs. Amanda Kelly's office. And through our various forms of communication, we were able to spread that word throughout our entire Methacton community. And we were happy to say we registered over 330 kindergarten students, which was a bump of about 20% from the previous year when we had half-day kindergarten. So our numbers pretty much indicate where we are with our first grade enrollment numbers, as we expected. Okay, now turn over to Mrs. Strauss.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. So we are off and running. From day one, our teachers were busy building a strong classroom community, establishing classroom routines, learning together and having fun, and collecting data. Both teachers and specialists worked to collect data so that we would understand the strength and needs of our students so we could help all learners grow. Next. And the benefits we're seeing are built right into our schedule. The full day is really providing daily opportunities for all academic subjects, plus recess, lunch, and our special areas, including gym, art, music, or library. So some of the benefits we're seeing with that are an increase in independence, socialization, engagement throughout the day, and academic growth in all subject areas. Next. And not only are we seeing benefits in our students, but hearing positive feedback from our teachers. The full day kindergarten has really added time, so teachers are feeling that they can extend their lessons in meaningful ways. Students are demonstrating a greater level of confidence, independence, and social skills. And there's a greater sense of community and ownership in the classroom, being that students know they're there the full day. Next. And the benefits for full day kindergarten are showing up in our data as well. So this slide is taking a look at the DIBELS data, DIBELS being the dynamic indicator of basic early literacy skills. So we're taking a look on the top portion there at phoneme segmentation. Phoneme segmentation measures the ability to segment or stretch out words with 3 to 4 sounds. So this is done orally where a student is given a word like sand and they would stretch it out sand. And we're looking at winter of 2022 where 63% of our students were meeting or exceeding the benchmark. And now this year with full day kindergarten at the same time frame, we have 77% of our students meeting or exceeding the benchmark. And then if we look at nonsense words with the correct letter sounds, students are looking at a word, so it's more measuring phonics, where they're looking at a word that is not a real word, such as POV, POV. And we're looking for students to either sound that out or say the word in its entirety. And in this time, students are being measured by the correct letter sounds that they're able to identify. So in the winter of 2022, we had 53% of our students meeting or exceeding the benchmark, whereas this time in this same year, winter 2023, we're up to 76% of our students meeting benchmarks. So there's a significant increase there in their understanding of those early literacy skills. And then if we look to our math data, I do not have any comparative data to share with you as we have changed some of our benchmark testing to make it more engaging and performance-based for our learners. But I am able to share with you some growth data from the fall of this year to the winter of our kindergarten students, and we're using the iReady diagnostic report. So if you look at the top there, we have at the beginning of the year, 85% of our students came in ready to learn, whereas 16% of our students were already meeting or exceeding some of the kindergarten benchmarks for that time period. And now in winter, we have 48% of our students meeting or exceeding kindergarten benchmarks. So we're seeing a significant amount of growth there. And to see that level of dark green there is really exciting. And I also wanted to share with you some of the highlights from our professional development this year. Last month, we met with our kindergarten and first grade team to go over structured literacy, which you may know as the science of reading, really looking at the explicit and systematic teaching of literacy components. Those are a great time for our kindergarten and first grade teachers across the district to have real communication about literacy. Throughout the year, we focused on kid writing as well, going in modeling lessons and having planning sessions together. We also took time to train some of our community members and families, and they are now volunteering in the classrooms for kid writing. Later this week, actually, we will work on productive struggle and collaborative conversations in our session on academic discourse. And then in May, we plan to have a training on setting the mathematical foundation in our iReady training, which Dr. Walsh will talk about later this evening. Dr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mrs. Strauss. So a few other things we're doing to prepare for next year. We recently held our virtual information night, which was attended by over 100 parents and guardians and families. This was widely attended, and a lot of people were interested in what full day kindergarten would look like for next year. So we shared all that information. All 4 elementary principals were on the call, as well as myself, Mrs. Strauss. We also had a counselor, 2 counselors from each school. We also had a reading specialist, and we were really excited just to share this information with our incoming families. Some of them are veterans, but others wanted to learn more about our new program. Registration began officially on February 1st. To date, we have 221 students registered. It's a few less than last year, but last year we felt also there was a sense of urgency to get registered as soon as possible. Parents wanted to get their names in there. So we expect that number to continue for next year as we continue to look at enrollments. About the same number, 310 to 320 is the projection, but we won't know that officially till the end of August. We took a kindergarten inventory last year. We'll continue to do that again for this year. It gives an information to our teachers and our building principals as they work to develop class lists. And some of that information is helpful that the reading specialists administer those inventories. And it's really important to understand for our families that the feedback we give them is just a screener, it's just a tool, and we put some things into place to help them over the summer to be more prepared for kindergarten. Welcome packets include some of those things that they can do over the summer to support their children. They're usually sent out later in the spring once registration is confirmed. They'll be sending those out probably late April or early May, and they'll continue throughout the summer. And then something that's exciting happening in the summertime are those summer bus rides and tours of the school, as well as the official Sneak a Peek, which is the unofficial kindergarten orientation on August 24th, usually held in the afternoon. More information will be coming out from each building principal later this spring and early summer, so parents can plan accordingly. Next slide. So as we look for eyes on the future, as Mrs. Strauss mentioned, we are, with your approval next week, adopting a new math program, K-8, looking at some of those foundational skills in kindergarten for our early numeracy and number sense. We're also refreshing our math manipulatives. We know that students understand best when they have manipulatives, and they can show models and demonstrate their understanding through different forms. So we'll be adding lots of manipulatives to our full day kindergarten program with this new math. We continue to work with our math coaches, and we're looking at our literacy specialists and our literacy coaches. Those are supporting not only student teaching and learning, but also it'll support all our teachers with the new expectations for our full day kindergarten, and how when we use our data to drive our instruction, that will also help move those kids forward. As you saw from the math slide, we had a lot of growth this year from the fall to the winter. We expect that same growth from winter to the spring, and if we can replicate some of those things for next year, we're going to be in really good shape with this program. So as Mrs. Strauss mentioned too, phonemic awareness, if you saw from the DIBELS data, we continue to see growth in that area. Basically, the students have a basic understanding of those early literacy skills. It's essential that they master those 44 sounds of the English language. Once they master those sounds, then they can make those word blends. And it's essential that we work with our teachers in these early foundational skills so that our students can succeed. So bottom line is we're excited, and just look at those smiles that the students are sharing with all of you. That says it all right there, the importance of kindergarten and how those are the building blocks for our future success. So we hope you learned a little more about our full day kindergarten, and always keep that picture in front of you that shows the tremendous things that our students bring every day. And again, we can't thank our teachers enough for being able to pivot and join us in this journey together. So that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Strauss. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Questions from members of the board? To my left, Ms. Drummond.
Thank you for the presentation. It's great to hear how it's going. I had a question because when we approved the full day kindergarten, we talked a lot about making sure that it wasn't just academic time, that it was socialization, that it was social emotional learning. And I don't know if there really are there's no metrics really available, but are there maybe indicators that are available or other ways to know how we're doing? Is there enough time granted for those types, that socialization, activity and growth for the students?
Yeah, what better way to answer your question that when we talked about the kitchens and we talked about those math manipulatives, that opportunity for students to have discourse with one another, opportunity for students to not only read and write, but listening and speaking, which are big parts of the ELA standards. So we're building those foundational listening and speaking skills as well. So it's not always about the reading and the writing and the math, but we used to call them soft skills, but they're really social emotional skills. Giving kids an opportunity to communicate and collaborate. Never lose sight of that in those early grades, any grades, as a matter of fact.
Other questions? Ms. Reese?
Couple questions. One is, based on this year, what, if any, tweaks are going to be happening for next year?
Off the top of my head, I can say our math program is going to be the big thing we're looking at. Changing from the program we currently have to a new resource that really focuses on exploration, really talks about those developmental skills, which are so important in kindergarten. So I think having that new resource is going to help. I know, Mrs. Strauss, anything that's off the top of your head? Because it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, I think we're just really going to improve what we've already laid as a foundation. Building on our kid writing knowledge and doing that every day has really been fantastic, and getting volunteers back into our schools. So I just really think moving in the direction that we're going and just becoming stronger at what we're doing.
And then my other question is based on, I know Dr. Engstead meets, with the IU for, early intervention discussions. So any additions of special education staff for our K-1 friends?
I will defer that to Dr. Engstead and Dr. Sergini.
Okay, so at some point, that's probably a discussion we need to have at maybe at education or wherever. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Purdue?
I do have one, and I think Ms. Reese touched on it already in reference to the tweaks that we needed to make. I'm just wondering if we, I know when we started talking about full day kindergarten, there was some pushback from some of our teachers and educators in reference to the time for those kids in kindergarten, right? Because now they had a longer day. I'm wondering, have any feedback, any changes? Do we need to consider any changes with the timing? And from our educators and also from the students' perspective.
As Mrs. Strauss mentioned, we met with the kindergarten teachers a little less than a month ago.
Okay.
Their feedback was very positive, positive in the fact that, does anybody need a nap at the end of the day? And I think it was more the teachers might need a nap. We understand that. We all do. But the kids are here. They're ready. They're learning. We continue to look at the schedule and how can we make adjustments in the schedule to best suit 5 and 6 year olds. But it really is very successful. There's not a whole lot of things we would do differently next year when it comes to meeting their needs as far as tiredness or fatigue or the academic piece.
And then I just have one, just because at education, we talked about benchmarks benchmarks was discussed. And I know for our older grades or higher grade levels, we mentioned that the benchmarks were really online, right? We're providing the assessments online for them just to align with what they'll be expecting in the future with PSSA and SAT testing. Is that similar approach at the kindergarten level, or is it too early? I figure.
Yeah, DIBELS is actually a one-on-one assessment. It's actually with an adult across from them. So that we are able to get that immediate feedback, and it's not done online. We input the data online, but DIBELS is done face-to-face, paper, pencil. Voice, yeah, really.
And I
We do
figure at
pencil.
that level, that's most likely where we are, but I was just wondering if if that was something we were considering or anything else.
The math component is done online.
Okay.
The iReady diagnostic is a digital assessment, and it's very kid-friendly and walks the students through each question. They actually think of it more like a game that they're playing, but it's collecting information and challenging them and figuring out what they're ready to learn.
Okay. And I just had one, I believe you said the projection is 321, around there, 300 and, do we have any concerns that we may see more and need more resources, or it's still kind of early to determine?
Dr. Zerby?
Well, right now, we are, I believe, approximately 80 students less than our flow enrollment projection shows. But in the current school year, we're actually 40+ students more than what the flow projection had stated. So there's likely a good chance that we will see another a wave of students, but I don't know if there'll be 80, but there certainly should be more than where we're at.
Thank you, that's it.
Ms. Graff?
So I just wanted to ask a little bit of a clarification. You had mentioned that you have volunteers that are trained in the kid writing. And I was just wondering if there's opportunities to utilize volunteers in other ways because of the extended day and the potential to have some other interactive activities. I just didn't know if it's been considered and what kind of things you have planned for the coming year.
Absolutely. So in addition to the kid writing that was offered, I did go to Shannondale and meet with some volunteers there and trained them a little bit in how to support literacy and numeracy as well. So reading and asking questions or using flashcards or something like that. And the people were very interested in that as well. And I believe one of our schools is also working with Meadowood or getting that program underway where people are coming in to read to groups of students as well. So there's a great interest and I was happy to be a part of it.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Ms. Cancro?
Everybody's got something to say. This is exciting. Listen, I'm very excited, and I think the data is wonderful, and I love the balance of the play and learn and social emotional learning and the academics. The one thing I'd like to add to the eyes on the future is technology. We've looked into and investigated one-to-ones, right? And we're looking at Chromebooks versus the iPads. So that's a new thing for us for next year too. And not that we're utilizing it and maximizing it, but being able to use it wisely. But I think the teachers did the trial, and that's what we're going to do for next year. So I just wanted to add that on too also.
Thank you.
Any other questions to my left, to my right? Ken?
Yeah, hi, thank you for this. I have a unique perspective because my daughter is in full day kindergarten right now at Woodland. She's actually in the background of that last picture you put up there.
That was not on purpose.
Yeah, so I've seen the improvement that she's made in Dibbles, even compared to my older daughter who went to half day kindergarten. I've seen significant improvement with my daughter who's been in full day kindergarten. So I do, appreciate everything that all the educators are doing. I had a question just about the feedback, and we touched on it a little bit earlier. I said, you said you met with the team recently and gathered feedback that way. How else are we kind of collecting feedback from our teachers? Is it kind of structured at different times throughout the year where we were getting feedback via surveys, or is it more anecdotal, or how are we kind of getting the pulse of the teachers at various times throughout the year?
Yeah, we are getting feedback. Our teachers are not shy when it comes to their passion for kindergarten. So they have shared with us both formally and informally through our trainings. Mrs. Strauss will talk a little bit about some of those instructional leadership teams, but we're getting lots of feedback on how we can improve, not just for our kindergartens, but for all grades. But specifically, we're constantly improving and how we can make our program better.
And have there been any challenges that they've brought forward that either they weren't anticipating, before we started this, and then now that they've gotten 7 months in, they're like, oh yeah, this is something that we have to fix for next year or address, or any?
So I'll answer your first question and then the second one. So one new thing that we've started this year is the instructional leadership team. So I'm meeting with grade levels about once a month to talk about different things that are important for professional development or anything on a teacher's mind. And so there's great conversation happening between the kindergarten teachers and the curriculum office. And I think overall they're very pleased with how things are going. And some of the things I think maybe that they've discovered maybe they need are just a few manipulative or resource type things, which are going to be addressed with the adoption of moving forward with the math program. And so things that we're already planning for. But great conversation always with the kindergarten teachers. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And it's very exciting.
And I'll just echo what Mrs. Cancro had said earlier about the feedback we got was the piloting the kindergarten technology device. So there's consensus on what that would look like for next year.
Mr. Winters?
Yeah, real quick, very appreciative to the parents, the admin staff and support that really obviously delivered a very successful first year full day kindergarten. So thank you everyone that's been involved. My question is more generic because this came up in education somebody asked me and I didn't really have a good answer. You mentioned something called persistence at Skyview at one point, I think, at the education meeting. And then today you mentioned productive struggle. So I assume that productive struggle is something we're trying to incorporate in more. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what productive struggle is?
So productive struggle is really a philosophy of providing students with opportunities to engage in learning without the full support of the adults in the room. So allowing them to investigate, to wonder, to try and fail and try again without us swooping in to come to the rescue. Just coming to the realization that there's a lot of learning that happens. And if you can create an environment where students feel safe and able to take risks, that comes off beautifully. And the learning is their own and matters a whole lot more and will stick with them far greater than something we're just delivering to them.
Very good. I guess that there are not going to be as many micromanagers in the future, hopefully.
Right.
So.
Well, thank you all for your comments. I think it's fair to also recognize that it's the commitment of this school board that's made this opportunity for our kindergarten students and our community for years to come to take advantage of the value, not only from a socialization perspective, but from an academic achievement and growth perspective. So thank you for your commitment to our students and our community. And thank you to all of our kindergarten teachers, our curriculum office, our principals, our volunteers, everyone that's making full day kindergarten an awesome experience here in the Methacton School District. Thank you. And next on the agenda, we have Mr. Bricker. Mr. Bricker will be presenting a summary of the proposed budget update. He did meet as we normally do monthly with the Finance Committee of the board, went into great detail with that presentation this evening. You have a copy of that presentation at your table. We'll be presenting that up on the screen. It is posted on the board presentation section of the district website. And Mr. Bricker is here this evening to summarize our status. Mr. Bricker?
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. So we did have some changes for this month as we moved into March. We started off with about $126.8 million budget with regards to revenue, and we ended up about $126 million even, which is about an $800,000 reduction. Most of that came from the reduction of the millage rate increase. It was at 4.1%. That was reduced to 3.3%. We also had the pupil services with regards to transportation. That subsidy was actually provided by PDE, so we were able to update that. We had some minor changes in the Social Security and retirement due to staffing changes. One of the other big ones that we had changed was the interest income. As our balances are going down, we have a formula that we use to project the interest income. So that went down about $500,000 also. I want to make sure I point that out, but it's still at about $1.4 million, which is roughly where we'll end this year on projection. The next thing we did is we went through the staffing changes. This time we had in the March update, we added 3 teachers that are required, 2 at Arrowhead and 1 for the high school. We have a placeholder for a facility supervisor, maintenance mechanic, and an additional communications and athletic office staff. That would bring our overall increase staff up to 628.77 FTE.
And Mr. Baker, I'm just going to interrupt for a second just to put more clarity around that because it was part of the discussion at the Finance Committee meeting. It should be known that our directors have been discussing enrollments in different grades and different sections throughout the district, with specifically the need for having 2 elementary teachers at Arrowhead. We have also a recommendation with more details to follow, but as a budget update, we also are recommending 1 high school teacher. The curriculum office is working with the Pennsylvania Department of Education to identify the appropriate certification, so I can't tell you what that is yet, but it's associated with moving forward in our strategic plan with the implementation of the Fab Lab. The idea of the Fab Lab, it's I'll call it a STEM makerspace on steroids, if that's even a proper term. But in general, we have led by our faculty at the high school. The Fab Vocational Lab will provide an outstanding opportunity for all of our subject areas, from art to music to math to science, to take advantage of the particular space to take theory and put it into an actual process, through a process into a product. So with that said, we have 1 high school position there that we'd like to recommend. And then we also have placeholders. If you remember in our proposed preliminary budget back in January, so that we could get to the 4.1% tax increase threshold at that time, we off the top took out the recommended facilities supervisor as well as the maintenance mechanic. We're recommending, based on this current update, that we add both of those positions back in as we originally had recommended. And then we are also putting as 2 placeholders an additional staff person in the communications office as well as the athletic office. Please know that while it's not on the agenda here this evening, I do plan on placing on the agenda a recommendation for an audit, a communication audit, to be conducted by the Chester County Intermediate Unit. That audit is a little less than $3,000 and should be able to be completed prior to a final recommendation on the budget. With that said, I'm just anticipating that there might be a need if we actually want to move from the current level of communications that we have in the district, and we're doing an outstanding job, in my opinion. But if we want to take it to the next level, we're likely going to need assistance of other professionals. And then obviously, Mr. Smink, our athletic director, is working with a committee of students, parents, and staff to review in terms of the opportunities that might lie ahead of us here in moving our athletic program from where we are to a higher echelon. So with that, these again, those last couple are just placeholders. So we will have more information on those and more detail for you. We wanted to make sure that this wasn't something we were sharing with you at the last minute. Mr. Ricker.
Thank you. The next one where we have is the summary of the expenditure changes. We had a unbalanced budget last month at $127.1 million, about $300,000 more in expenditures. Now with the reduction of expenses, we're able to now present back into a balanced budget of $126 million, again at a 3.3% millage increase down from the 4.1. The biggest drivers on this one were the Social Security due to staffing changes, retirement changes. Our medical went down 2.5 million dollars. I know third look could even go down more. I don't know where that's going to end up. There's also the reduction in prescription. And then we had some of the operating changes. We have SOAR that was brought back in. Our transportation costs went up $115,000. This is mainly due to field trips. We're running a lot more field trips than we did in the past. So that's getting picked up as we return to, I guess, a more normal point of life with field trips, which is good to see. We had some increased substitute costs due to the fact that we don't have many open positions as we've had in the past due to the changes in our contracts. We had some minor facilities costs, technology costs, and then we added Wonder 6th grade for about $62,000. All in all, like I said, $126 million in expenditures. The next slide that you have gives you a summary of the revenue changes. This is one of the things we added last month so we can track from month to month what is changing so everyone can see, how the numbers change from the start to the end. Some comments on would be putting in a beginning preliminary budget prior to February, and then the total would be the total changes, and then to the right of that would ultimately be the current budget status. So I'm going to be looking to try and add that in for the next month. We also have the salary and benefits, which tracks the same way. And then we have the operating and debt service and transfers, again, operating the same way as it tracks the changes each month. Finally, at the end, what you get to see is the change of the current budget status. As I said, we were about $300,000 over the Act 1 when we finished the February updates. With the changes that we were able to do, we now can make changes that $300,000 excess in expenses is now balanced. We're at $126,037,033.98. Again, balanced, and a 3.3% millage increase, again, down 0.8%. Key timeline items, and this is the stuff that we need to know that's coming up. We have the April assessments and millage and staffing changes and charter school changes. Those are going to be on every month. So every month we're going to look at the assessments, the millage, the staffing changes, and the charter school adjustments to make sure that we're putting in the proper amounts for those items. In April, we should get the third look. Whether or not we get it in time for the April update, I would bet not in time for the April update, but it would be in the May update, but we will receive that in April. We will get our workman's comp. Again, not sure when it's going to come in, but we should get that number. And then when you go into May, we'll get the property E&O insurance, technology leases will be accurate. We will have to make a decision on the food service management company and which program we want to run. So there's an option of running the high school on the off the National School Lunch Program or on the National School Lunch Program. And once we get at the end of this month, we'll be getting all these proposals. When we review them, we can then assess those, and then we can make a recommendation going forward on that. And then in June, you'll have the final numbers that will update. Typically, what we're updating at that point is just the June assessments and adjusting the millage. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Birker. Any questions, comments from members of the board to my right? Seeing none, how about to my left? Ms. Drummond?
Hi, thank you. I just had a quick question about the transportation cost under the expenditure changes. The 115,000 that you said was largely from field trips.
So we're running more athletic trips. and
Oh, it's
field trips than
athletic
we
too.
have. Yes.
Okay, all right. Because I was like, I didn't know. I mean, I know you always, the parent pays often, so there's a lot of offset there, but it's a lot for athletics as well, you're saying?
Yes, so the expenses for transportation are different because the revenue will be adjusting also.
Right.
As we collect that, so there's a revenue piece associated with that. But the transportation, so when we run activities, when we run the athletic decathlons, when we run states, when we go to field trips or call field trips, athletic events, all that ties into that. And we're increasing that much more than we had in the past.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Thank you.
It's definitely positive.
Yeah.
Any other questions about Ms. Graff?
Yeah, hi. Thanks. This was a really good, easy to follow synopsis for me today. So thank you. I just had a question, and I'm back on the staffing review, and I just wanted to ask the question about the placeholders for the facility supervisor, maintenance mechanic. Are they new positions that are being put as placeholders because of some need?
Yeah, so the maintenance, I'm sorry, the facility supervisor, it's our belief that with 2/3 of the custodial staff working in the evening, having a supervisor supervising them and providing training and being able to offset some of the things that probably should be done on an off hours segment of time versus during the heart of the school day. would make sense for us. But plus it also helps with, the potential of creating, a more responsive facilities team. The second part is with the maintenance mechanic. It is clear that from the facilities assessments and the preventive maintenance mechanism that we also got along with that. So all of the evaluations of our resources, from pumps to other equipment within the facilities, comes with a manufactured suggested preventative maintenance process. So that's going to be dumped into our school dude maintenance program, and it's going to give us a pretty good indication of needing more staff to keep the standard of preventative maintenance in place.
So although it's new, it's really going to be necessary to be able to maintain the facilities the way we should be.
Yeah, it's a
So the
difference between
preventative
should
maintenance
and
schedules.
can.
Okay.
And that's, again, what we want to be able to do is once we get through the facilities assessments, and I have a little bit of information in my report a little later here, but once we get through that, and we have those numbers in order, we're going to be sharing that back as the data saying that, hey, for each of the buildings, we need this many people. And we're going to be able to, so we didn't want to just dump that on the board, in May or June and say, hey, we try to, I'll call it, lack of a better term, cram that in. And we were trying to show you that there are some things that we probably need to anticipate if we're going to, create an opportunity to make the investment that we need here in the district.
Okay, and then the other question I had was around the communication office supporting staff. When we do this communication audit, it will help us to understand what that staff position would be, whether it's full-time, part-time, what kind of experience, what level of experience, what type of experience we're looking for to support, and what kind of support the district actually could benefit from. Is that correct?
That's correct. So in comparing us to other similar sized districts, we really have a coordinator and a secretary that run the communications, from managing the website to all the publications to managing our social media to going out and taking the footage for videos and all sorts of things and working with the news media. So they do a tremendous amount of work. But I think within our communications plan, we could certainly be more focused, more targeted, and make a much better opportunity for us to communicate with our staff, our students, and our community.
So the communication audit then will be a little bit of a benchmarking exercise.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Any other questions from members of my left? All right. Mr. Baker, thank you so much. And that ends the guests and scheduled speakers for this evening. Then on the March 28th meeting, we'll have the Award of Excellence. Dr. Pardovich, the vocational director from North Monco Technical Career Center, will present, as well as we'll be giving some recognition to some students. Dr. Angstad will join us with some of our third-party providers from Springfield Psychological to give an update on the REACH program. And then I'll be providing a brief update on what's ahead for us in the food services opportunities. We have then reports from the different committees. And I have, just for this evening, I have 3 quick announcements under the superintendent's report, because I think it's important to go over these here this evening, if you don't, board doesn't mind. Facility assessment, please know that my administration and I are reviewing the building assessments and will be seeking clarification and proposing corrections, et cetera, on the reports in the coming weeks. For the property committee meeting in April, given our trajectory of final acceptance of these reports by the board at the end of April, it is my recommendation that we fold all the 6 buildings into a facilities master plan that leverages economy of scale along with priorities to lay out a 10-year master plan. I will then also provide a more detail on a more comprehensive process surrounding the challenges with Methacton High School. In terms of Audubon Elementary School update, I just want to make note that I presented an update to on the Audubon Elementary School property at the March 13th Property Committee meeting of the board. The presentation can be found on the district website under the board presentations. As you may recall, as part of the authorization to level Audubon Elementary School, I am I am to provide a recommendation for the future educational use of the property by July 31st of 2023. In terms of that timeline, we are on target with a final public tour scheduled for this Thursday and a demolition to begin in July. The plan is to have the building completely removed and the former footprint regraded. The driveways and the parking on the west side of the property, as well as in the rear parking lot, will be retained. The parking lot on the east side of the property is retained as well, along with a pathway to the playground. I share that at this point, we considered using the property in the following three ways. A location of a future school if needed. However, we know that in the next 10 years, based on enrollment projections, that is not necessarily required. The next item, athletic fields. We considered placing a track and field facilities for use by our Arcola and high school students. And third, we also considered what it would mean if we moved our district busing terminal and buses and drivers to that location, which would provide a relief for the high school student, staff, and visitor parking on the high school campus. Aside from a new school on the site, if it was ever needed, using the use of a busing facility or athletic facility would require significant stormwater management, and the resulting improvements could cost anywhere between $5 to $7 million. So at this point, I'm not very hopeful that an immediate educational use is in the cards. It may require us to sit on the property or proceed with the sale. The next item I have is just an update on the reconsideration of instructional materials request. As an update on parental requests for reconsideration of instructional materials, the district received 10 formal requests for reconsideration of 8 library books to date. Dr. Walsh, the district's director of curriculum, has, as per policy 109, formed a committee of at least 2 teachers, a librarian, and a building administrator to review the material and judge whether the resource conforms to the principles for selected materials. A written report will be sent from the committee to the director of curriculum. The curriculum director will review and send the report to me as superintendent, and I will provide it to the requester, the board, and the public. We anticipate a report by the end of this month, and the review includes the following titles: Tricks, The Kite Runner, The Bluest Eye, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, This Book is Gay, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, All Boys Aren't Blue, and Out of Darkness. And then we will go on to, we'd have public comment, the minutes, and then we go into fiscal items. Mr. Bricker?
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. This month, for the board's approval, we have the list of bills, treasurer's report, budgetary transfers. For Arrowhead Construction, we have 5 change orders. Change order 39 for $3,510.52, which is to reimburse the owner, which is us, for the electrician to remove and reinstall devices, which is item number 5 under this, CO7 for the electrical contractor, which was to remove and reinstall the devices for the tile installer. There's the mechanic contractor, CO7, for balancing EF18 at a cost of $575. That's the room that we had to put in the ceiling, if you may recall. Approve electrical contractor change order number 5, which is to provide and disconnect power for the gym floor sanding machines at a cost of $1,000. This was directly due to the shut off of the water associated with Audubon Water shutting off the water, and then us having to turn off the HVAC, and therefore they had to leave because they could not complete the sanding, then come back and remobilize for that. And then you have change order number 6, which is to extend the power to 9 rooftop units and chillers at a cost of $5,968.31. Under the 2023 capital projects for planetarium, we have the motion to approve Conics to provide engineering design and installation graphics and materials for the DDC controls at a cost of $10,760. To approve Walter Brucker and Company to provide general construction services at a cost of $101,500. This was bid, and they were the lowest bidder. Approve Hirschberg Mechanical to provide mechanical construction services at a cost of $139,475. This also was bid, and they are the lowest bidder. And then finally, to approve S&S Electrical, Inc. to provide electrical construction services at a cost of $153,778. This was bid. They were the only bidder and therefore the lowest bidder.
Thank you, Mr. Bricker. And just as a reminder, we'll be adding to the agenda the Chester County intermediate contract for the communications audit. Are there any questions for Mr. Bricker? Ms. Graff?
Mr. Bricker, I had a question about electrical contractor change order 06, the one about the power on the rooftop units. Can you just provide a little more clarity around that?
Yeah, so what had happened was that they had the design differences. It's when they put in the first pieces, and I can't remember the actual language that I put in the update. But when they did the original designs, there's a spot where they had to go through the roof and put the junction boxes in. And that was set up by the general contractor in a different spot than the mechanical contractor in a different spot than the electrical contractor had anticipated. There was communication issues that caused this, and therefore they had to run additional lines to reach those units.
So they were in fact installed in a different place than the electrical contractor had scoped in his original bid.
Yes,
So he had to adjust the
he
cost.
had to adjust,
associated.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions on fiscal items? We go on to the personnel items. Dr. Sergini.
Thank you, Dr. Zerby, and good evening. For your consideration in March, we have the following personnel items. One resignation, Administrator Erica Thomas, Supervisor of Secondary Special Education at the high school. We thank Erica for her service to Methacton and we wish her well. Two resignations, classified, both paraprofessionals, Maveen Gower at Eagleville and Caroline Van Buskirk at the high school. We thank Maveen and Caroline for their service to Methacton and we wish them both well. We have one employment professional, Dana Grossi, 8th grade reading teacher at Arcola. We welcome Dana to Methacton and we look forward to the good work that she'll do with our students in the many decades to come. One employment classified, Noelle Mullen, paraprofessional at Eagleville. We thank Noelle for joining the Methacton family and we look forward to the good work that she will do with our students in the many decades to come. We have one change of status classified, Christopher DiLiberto, from second shift custodian at Arcola to head custodian at Worcester. We thank Chris for taking on this new leadership role. We have a change in compensation confidential for the 4 district employees who are identified as confidential personnel by increasing their base rate of pay by $2 per hour effective April 1st of this year. We have one uncompensated leave, Donna Payton, secretary to the assistant principal at Skyview, as noted. One sabbatical leave for the first semester of next school year, Rebecca Flaherty, first grade teacher at Woodland. And 3 supplemental contracts, one for Act 48 committee members, one for student support at extracurricular activities, and one additional activity sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sergini. Any questions from members to my left? For Dr. Sergini, to my right? Seeing no questions, Dr. Sergini, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have curriculum and programs. Dr. Walsh.
Thank you, Dr. Zerby. Next week, I'll be seeking to approve the following resources for adoption for the 23-24 school year. Those are those 10 resources listed below, and they are made for public review through tomorrow afternoon. To date, we've had one requester asking for digital access, and those 10 items are listed below. I'll also be seeking to approve the Chapter 339 plan for the 23-26 school year. Those documents are continuing to be made available through the Farina office through tomorrow afternoon, which ends the 30-day review cycle. And we'll be seeking to approve both those items for next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Any questions from members to my left? Seeing none, to my right, Mr. Winters.
I just want to remind that I believe this is the most supported mathematics change that we've had for a long time, and the iReady mathematics. And I think it's good for you to explain how actually many of the staff want to implement it mid-year this year and understand that this is a positive change for the district. Is anything you can add towards that?
No, thank you, Mr. Winters. We are ready for iReady. Yes, a K-8 program. We had several teachers pilot, and the feedback was unanimous for the 2 programs that they looked at. And so we are excited to begin our professional development once it gets approved hopefully next week. And we have lots of opportunities planned for our teachers. And the good news is we've been given the iReady diagnostic assessment free of charge, and most of our teachers are using it and are extremely pleased with the results they're seeing. So we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get down to work.
Any other questions to my right, left? Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Thank you so much. And policy, Mr. Regina.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. For this month, we just have our second read policies, the ones we reviewed last month. We did not have a policy meeting in March. We will be revisiting that committee meeting in April, and we'll have a large number of policies to review since we missed March. So look forward to that in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Any questions on any of the second reading items? Seeing none, okay. And then under other, for 13A, approve the resignation of School Board Director Marisa Rocco. Does that mean you're not going to be sitting next to me? For March 29th, 2023, we want to thank Marisa for her commitment to the Methacton community, and certainly you'll be missed among the board and the community for your participation and your thoughts and having to make Methacton schools an excellent opportunity for students to learn and grow. So thank you so much for all that you've done for us. In terms of, I'm sorry, do you want to say? Yeah, sure.
I figured I'd say something now, if that's okay. So I just want to thank everybody, and I want to thank the community and those that supported me through this process. My family and I are relocating out of the district, and I've lived here my whole life, so it will be a little awkward to not run into friends and people I went to high school with and grade school with at the grocery store, but we are only moving about a half hour away, but it is the best decision for our family at this time. So I do want to thank everybody and everyone on this board. A special huge thanks to Paul. He really helped me through Finance Committee, and I know he was very patient with me, and I really do want to thank him for his support, because that was not a strong suit of mine. And I think that, with a little bit of patience and working with any new board member, anyone can do this job and certainly do this job well. So I know there are many seats. Believe me, I did have a conversation with our solicitor to see if there was any way that we didn't have to temporary fill and then add the other seat to the election in November, but we just can't per school code. And obviously I will not be residing here after next week. So unfortunately, we have to add that other seat to the election. So I wish folks that are running the best of luck. And I know that there are many people at this table that are supportive and will certainly help you along the way. And tonight will actually be my last meeting just due to my settlements and things that I have next week. But thank you.
And just since we're saying it, I just want to say on behalf of the board, thank you, Marisa, for all your time and all the effort you put in on the board since you've been here. Thank you.
I know we still have to approve it next week, but that's okay. In terms of 13B, gifts and donations, you see on the agenda to approve a generous gift from Chadwick Restaurant through Methacton High School girls basketball team sponsorship or amount of $1,000. You can see the trips listed here. Methacton High School trip to participate in the co-curricular science fair at Penn State University, May 14th through the 16th. Approve the high school trip to participate in the PMEA All-State Ensembles held at Pocono Manor Convention, April 19th through the 22nd, and retroactively approve the Methacton High School boys and girls swim teams overnight trip to Bucknell University this past weekend to participate in the state championships. We also know that under transportation, we are going to approve the drivers as part of the transportation roster for the 22-23 school year as listed. And then I'll turn the meeting over to Madam President.
Thank you. And I just want to comment on trips. I mean, these trips are really impressive and really show the caliber of students and instruction that we have in our district. I mean, the science fair, the all-state, the swim team, I mean, it's really impressive.
It is.
So next is dates for board members' calendars. You can see them listed there. There is a date change for the policy committee to note. And does anyone have anything for old or new business? from the board? Ms. Purdue?
Just briefly want to thank Ms. Rocco for her time on the board. I know it's not an easy position to take on, so I do appreciate you stepping in to support your community.
Thank you, Ms. Purdue. Anyone else?
I just wanted to say what a tremendous job that the district did last week through Thon, and just to recognize all of the work that goes into that, and seeing that that's just great news amongst our community, and I just wanted to recognize that.
Thank you. Anyone else for any old or new business tonight? Okay. It's time for courtesy of the floor, an opportunity for residents to make comments on matters that are or may be before the board. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and we may choose to respond to matters, and you can submit questions via email to information@methacton.org. Anyone for courtesy of the floor this evening?
Good evening, Sheila Smith, Lower Providence. At the last board meeting, Dr. Zerby accused me of spreading misinformation. That was not an accurate statement. On March 20th, I confirmed with Dr. Zerby that he and I used the exact same sources, School Digger, Niche, and the U.S. News and World Report. Each source has a different rating and methodology, so you can't interchange the sources. I question the validity of using Niche when Methacton School District is paid them $5,000. What was the exact use of the $5,000? Facts matter. In 2014, our ranking was 11 with CARE when CARE took the majority of the board in 2015. Since 2015, our ranking consistently declined despite raising our taxes every single year. In the 2022-2023 school year, U.S. News ranking is 62, Niche is 51, and School Digger is 87, which is 30-point decline from last year. Leading indicators for school rankings are test scores, survey results, which have never been publicly shared, audit findings, declining enrollment, teacher retention, morale, and building capacity. In 2014, our enrollment was 4,974. The last enrollment report in September stated it was 4,592. It would be helpful if that report was posted every month with the Education Committee. Methacton School District saw proficiency decline by more than 25% percentage points in the PSSA math scores. According to the Future Ready PA Index in the 2022-2023 school year, Methacton failed state assessment measures in English and Math, Algebra 1. In fact, several Methacton High School students who qualified to take regular geometry in 9th grade failed and had to retake Algebra 1 Keystones in December 2022. How can the district explain the drastic discrepancy between their final grades in Algebra 1 and their report card with their Keystone exam scores? All very alarming and all leading indicators as to why our district rankings are continuing to decline. And I also just want to state that when you look at the data, I find it interesting that Worcester as actually points are higher than Arrowhead and the other elementary schools. And I'm wondering why that is. And if you also look at best practices across, Radnor is right across, it's not far, and they have consistently been number one. What are they doing differently? And that's my point. We're all in this together, and I respect all the data, but the data can be manipulated and it's not telling the whole story. And you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. Thank you.
Jim Mollick, Worcester. Yeah, I don't want to be a downer, on Miss Rocco's last meeting, but I was at a meeting where you guys are slamming her. for not taking her committee spot. You know, everybody wants to do the kumbaya moment, but everybody forgets when she was getting slammed for not taking her committee spot. So, you know, nice having you on the board and good luck. But the way you guys treated her, and it may sound good now, but it was not good back then. Liz, you ought to attend a property committee meeting. I was at a property committee meeting, no time requirement, a dialogue, answer questions. Most incredible meeting I think I've ever attended. So you may actually benefit from going to one of those meetings and checking it out. Dave, you do owe Sheila Smith an apology. She had the figures correct. When CARE took over, 11th in the state. Today, 62. She was right, and you went up here on your false narrative, I guess, CARE campaign manager, tirade. I guess you're the manager for the group now, because it's hard to argue with those statistics, but you seem to want to protect the board and protect the CARE team rather than dealing with the problem. And you are dealing with the problem because you got a strategic plan to deal with it. So don't come up here and give the public the misinformation deal. And it brings to mind, I think it was 2 years ago, Miss Purdue sat up front and campaigned from the front for the CARE group. Not only do we have the superintendent doing it, we had a board member doing it as well. So, I think the campaign stuff is for the campaign. You need to stick to the facts and deal with those issues. And again, very inappropriate for somebody who's shot me the finger because she didn't like what I was saying to be making, noises during my presentation. The right to know situation looks like to date $31,000 for right to know. 31,000. It was 975,000, and no one up front wants to take credit for this miraculous improvement. I mean, you're going to be at 60 grand at the end of the year. How do you save $900,000 and don't say a word about it? You did have a lot to say about blaming requesters for the 975, but you don't want to tell people the truth about how you got to 60. I'm going to give you an opportunity, and if you don't, I'm going to help you with that little exercise. Thanks.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. Good evening. Dr. Malik has been attending these meetings since, I would say 2006. I might be off by 1 or 2. He keeps getting better and better, even though he took a serious hit at one of the meetings. This evening, there was brief mention of contracts to be voted on next week for the planetarium. There was a presentation in November on the costs and the revenues to pay for the planetarium. At that time, there was no contingency, and you'll be asked to vote next week for 3 or 4 contracts that are $60,000 over budget. Dr. Malik at the property committee meeting said that originally the teacher in charge went to Dr. Zerbe and asked for just a planetarium, just a projector for something like $140,000. Now, after Dr. Zerbe said, go for something big, the cost is approaching 10 times that amount, something well above $1 million. And I had spoken at an earlier meeting saying that there was nothing wrong with the projection dome. That's being replaced for $180,000. And then there was a claim that, well, most of the money comes from the feds, not from us, but it still comes from taxpayers. And if there's nothing wrong with the projection dome, what are we getting for our money? It's not clear. Also, regarding the planetarium, I'm unsure how many exits there are from it. I would think by fire code there'd need to be 2, and perhaps someone could allay my concerns. Thank you.
Good evening, Kathleen Theo, Lower Providence. I felt the need to share with you a unique perspective that I have. I am a parent of in the district, and I have 3 kids, 2 of whom have attended half-day kindergarten, and my youngest is in full-day kindergarten today. I also I have my master's in literacy, and I am a reading specialist. I'm actually a literacy coach right now. And Dr. Walsh has received numerous emails from me with questions because I care very deeply about the science of reading and the science of learning. And so I really want to, I just felt the need to share with you as a parent, the growth that I have seen in my daughter with the implementation of the phonemic awareness work that they've been doing at kindergarten this year. It's amazing to see the growth she's made. While I'm making dinner, we're segmenting the words and we're hearing it out. Mom, cat. Yes, cat, sweetheart. All day long. But you know what? It's wonderful because this work that they're doing is setting them up for success later on. And I am so excited for the groundwork that is now being laid, was being laid, but is now even stronger. And I felt the need to share that with you because of the great presentation from earlier. Additionally, my son who's at Skyview is in one of the pilot programs with iReady, and he's been doing phenomenal with it. He was in 2 programs this year and is now doing iReady, and it's been a really great experience for him. I really just wanted to share that. Thank you so much for the great work that's being done there, because my kids and all the kids, knowing what I know about education, this is benefiting everyone in our district, which is phenomenal. And Ms. Rocco, thank you so much for what you've done for our community.
Anybody else for courtesy of the floor this evening? All right. Seeing none. Any final thoughts from board members? All right. Yes?
Yeah, I think
Dr.
I
Zerbe?
want just, so I think it's important when we use information that we share the information in a complete fashion. So as an example, as I believe I said last week, when people refer to the district being 11, that is the infamous number that we hear often, and is certainly, as I said last week, the number where I think we ought to aspire to on a consistent basis. However, it's one number, and it's the only time we were 11 in 20-year history. It should be known that on average, from the past 10 years, the district average ranking is around 51. The 10 years prior to that, the average ranking is 81. We did rank 11 at once. We ranked 175 once. We ranked 30 once. And that was the only other number that we've come close to in terms of 11. And I think the message that I heard this evening is being all in this together. It's important that we recognize that it doesn't help any of us, myself included, to debate numbers. It's to make sure that we focus on the strategies associated with helping our students grow and achieve. And ultimately, that in itself will take care of the ranking, in my opinion. So with that, I hope that together, members of the public, members of the audience, and certainly members of this board and our school community know that our strategic plan is definitely designed to keep an eye on our ranking, but also to make sure that our constituents have an exceptional Methacton School District experience. So with that said, that's my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Any other wrap-up comments from the board? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. McGinnis, may I have a second? Mr. Winters, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming out.